Test 1, 2. Cass? Any of these monitors work for the keyboard? I'm hearing really tinny. Oh, it's okay. Just EQ maybe. Yeah, definitely. Test.
Thank you, Robert. What a wonderful way to enter this space this morning. Welcome, everyone, to the Unitarian Universalist Church of Tucson. I am Reverend Jamelia Omar, one of our ministers here, and it is good to be with you today. We gathered today to remember the life of Burton Hemley Schneider, or Burt, as most of you know him. We gathered today to celebrate Burt's life, and in doing, also to mourn his death. When we celebrate a life now completed, we come with so many questions. Why do we die when we die? What happens after death? How will I get by? And when will my own time come? And alongside these questions, we grieve. We have anger and confusion, emptiness, sometimes relief, and much sadness. Whatever you are feeling right now, I invite you to bring those feelings to this space. I invite you to be present during our time together to Burt's spirit and life. We have come together not only to mark Burt's death, but also to celebrate his life, and what a life it was. One filled with loves and music. Let us bring our memories, our stories, and pictures, happy, sad, and somewhere in between. Let us bring it all here. To this time we share, let us gather to mourn and cry, to laugh and celebrate the life and the loves that were. Before we get into the service, a few housekeeping things for those of you that are new to our space. There are handicap and accessible restrooms behind the AV desk and restrooms out in the lobby. Should you need to use it, please help yourself. And there will be a reception after the service. Out these doors, follow the crowd. Everyone is welcome. In Unitarian Universalist services, we light a chalice at the beginning of each worship service, meeting, and rite of passage. This chalice is a symbol of our faith and a symbol of the continuing fire of life that flows throughout all of us. When we light it each week, we are reminded that we are not alone, and that each of us has a spark of the divine that is greater than each of us in ourselves. So Jenny is going to come up and light our chalice as I say these words by Reverend Mira Mitzkowitz. We light this chalice which transforms wax into pure light and warmth to remind us of our own living, transforming the stuff of this world into the love and activity of our daily lives. As we remember Burt, may today bring forth transformation in ourselves, from grief to healing, from memory, wholeness, and from celebration, love. Good job. Mr. Ray Lindstrom.
You know, the last time I was in a church with Burt was 8 years ago. He was best man at my wedding to Renee. And I'm sure, I said the last time I was in a church with Burt, I'm sure he's here today. Don't you think so? Of course. Burton Hemley Schneider. Burt was my buddy, my pal, my friend, business partner, confidant, moral compass, psychologist, classmate, accomplice, best man, sounding board, and me being an only child, my brother for almost 70 years. 70 years. And you know, we first met on the Tanque Verde school bus when we were 14 years old, and the school bus took us to Catalina High School. And I'll never forget, it was just like it happened yesterday. I was sitting in the front row of the school bus, and I was on the bus first, and then the bus door opened up, and this kid gets on the bus, and it's Burt, and he sits right next to me in the front row of that bus. And we didn't say a word to each other, never said a word to each other, never saw each other in our lives ever before. And so the bus goes on, and it goes a couple of miles, and all of a sudden the bus driver swerves the bus to avoid a dog. And It was kind of a surprise to everybody, and Bert's sitting there, and he turns to me and he says, "Should he have endangered the lives of the kids on the bus to avoid hurting the dog?" That was the first thing that I ever heard from Bert. And if you know Bert, that's something that he would have said, because that's the kind of guy he was. And he could have said that when he was 14 like he did, or when he was 30 or 50 or 80. It didn't make any difference, but that's what he would have. It sounded like Bert. You know, Bert was born in Brooklyn in 1942. He moved with his parents and his sister Patty to Tucson, where they established Tree Haven School. So I met Bert on that school bus. Here, he's this Jewish kid from New York. I'm the Swedish Lutheran from Illinois. And yet, we hit it off right away because of our interest in two things. We were interested in radio, and we were interested in records. We both wanted to be on the radio, and we both wanted to be involved in the record business. And amazingly enough, those two things we both accomplished before we were 18 years old. And I tell you, finding Bert for me was like discovering gold, because he had his own radio station at Tree Haven School. And up on the third floor of the school, he had a station, and he had speakers all over the school. Here he's 14 years old. He's got his own little radio station. He called it KTRN, the voice of Tree Haven. He had a microphone, he had a turntable, and he had a tape recorder. Who had a tape recorder in those days? Wow. We had the Burton Ray show. We were disc jockeys. We played records to all the kids in the school. And, you know, we actually recorded some of those shows that I have to this day. And you ought to hear them. They are so hilarious, and they are awful. They're terrible. You know, it's, "Hey, Bert, what are you going to play now?" "I don't know, Ray. How about Peggy Sue?" "Okay, here's Buddy Holly and Peggy Sue." And then about halfway through the record, we'd start singing Peggy Sue. Well, I tell you, about a month ago, before Bert passed away, we were over at Handmaker, and both of us were still singing Peggy Sue together, believe it or not. Wow, what friendship. Well, at Catalina High School, we set up a radio station to play music during lunch hour. We had the microphone and the turntable in the boys' bathroom. In 1957, we got our big chance at real radio in Tucson, the first FM station, which was KTKT FM, and we were announcing classical music on the weekends. I think my friend Ford Burkhart, who here, I think he did that a little bit too, as a matter of fact, didn't you? Sure you did. And so this was great. You know, this was our first big chance, big time on television, well, on radio, I should say. But, you know, Bert came from an intellectual family where they actually knew about classical music. My parents, they listened to the WLS barn dance on Saturday night, you know. So he knew it was Wagner. I thought it was Wagner. He was much more advanced than I was. Our parents had to drive us to the station. We weren't even 16 yet. Well, when Bert and I were 17, we started Tucson's first record company, Zoom Records, and had a series of local hits with Tucson bands, including Pete Ronstadt of the Night Beats. And we would go over to Pete's house to rehearse, and we told his younger sister, Linda, "Get lost, kid, this is serious business." Came this close. In 2013, Dan Cruz, who is here today, did a documentary about us, and I tell you about these two kids in the record business, and it was just a fabulous documentary. And that with this new thing called the internet, and all of a sudden our music has a whole generation of new fans. Who would have known that? Now you're going to see, they're going to have a video later on, and some of the music behind the video is some of our Zoom records, and it will include Pete Ronstadt and Jack Wallace. Let's go back to 1959. Bert's parents had his whole life mapped out for him. After graduation, he was supposed to attend pre-med at Haverford College and then attend a famous medical school on his way to becoming a doctor. That's what they wanted for him. Unfortunately, Bert had other plans. He wanted to be a disc jockey. Me too. His parents thought that I was a bad influence on him, which, by the way, I was. When we graduated from high school, we both started at the University of Arizona. We both got jobs in radio as disc jockeys. We both worked at KAIR Radio, a station here that had awful ratings. I mean, it was so bad, we'd have contests, and nobody would call in. We had to make up names of winners. we probably had a bigger audience at Tree Haven School than we did at that radio station. Well, Burt's parents finally succeeded in getting him away from my bad influence and get serious about his academic life, and they convinced him to go to Boston University, and he did. But he couldn't get rid of the radio bug. You know, he still wanted to be on the radio, and he was on the radio in Boston at WBUR, the radio station of the school. And he graduated in 1963 with a degree in communications arts. After graduation, he spent 6 years as an officer in the Navy, the final 2 being in charge of Armed Forces Radio in Taiwan. Great career, keeps going along. He married Louise Glass and had their first child, and Laura was born. After military duty in 1969, he returned to the States. And Burton and I would talk a lot about 1969 and 1970 as a critical time in his life. Because after the Navy, he ended up in New York. And he actually interviewed with major TV networks about becoming part of their management training program. Burt had the right stuff for that, and he had the right background, and could have brought him just great success at the network level. But at the same time, Burt's parents were ready to retire from Tree Haven School, and they wanted him to return to the school and help him out and be business manager. They had somebody new to run it academically, but they wanted somebody to kind of oversee the operation and finances as assistant director. Well, Burt made the decision to return to Tucson and work at the school. Now, I'm convinced that if he would have stayed in New York, that he would have retired as president of the CBS television network, really, because he was that quality of an individual, and he knew broadcasting, and he just would have been fabulous. That's not what he did. Burt and Louise moved to Tucson, and soon their family would expand to 3 daughters, Laura, Andrea, and Jenny, the loves of his life. And Jenny is the person who organized our little celebration today. Thank you, Jenny. I know Burt is proud of you for doing this, believe me. Lots of interesting tales from Burt. One, while he was managing the school, he got a call from movie director Peter Bogdanovich, who wondered if he could come and audition one of his students, a gal by the name of Tatum O'Neill, to be in a movie he was getting ready to produce. The audition was in Burt's office. She was good, and she was hired for the movie Paper Moon. She won an Oscar for the performance, and at the time was the youngest to ever do so. Burt also had a famous cousin, and his name was Leonard Schneider, more familiarly known as comedian Lenny Bruce. He would tell stories about his visit with Lenny, and believe me, they were, if you know anything about Lenny Bruce, they were always entertaining. Also, his uncle Stan, who we used to visit when, Burt and I, it's amazing that he and I ever graduated from high school, because, we were always cutting class to go to Phoenix to record, to promote our records or whatever, and he had an uncle who was living in Phoenix, and we would go up there and we would stay at his house. Well, he was married to a gal by the name of June Whitley Taylor, and she was an actress, and she had appeared in many early TV shows like I Love Lucy, and was the mother on the Monkees TV show, as a matter of fact. Well, I'm sorry to say that Tree Haven did not survive without the elder Schneiders at the helm. The school principal was responsible for many of the problems, and they closed in 1980. Burt's marriage to Louise had come to an end, and with the closing of the school, there was a new chapter ahead. And he went back to work in radio and public relations here in Tucson. Now, even though he and I were in Phoenix, he and I had some businesses together. We had the Arizona franchise of the Columbia School of Broadcasting. We also dabbled in the book business, and when I say dabbled, I mean dabbled. We never made any money at any of that stuff. In 1982, Burt married Dr. Jennifer Wing, and with her 2 children and his 3 girls, they all lived together as a blended family. Like a real-life version of the Brady Bunch, was it? Okay. Jenny's shaking her head. That's right. I should ask Jennifer that, too. Where's Jennifer? I know Jennifer's here today. There she is back there. Well, in 1987, Burt's professional life took a new direction. He opened up a T.J. Cinnamon's restaurant at Swan and Grant. Into the 1990s, and Burt's life changed again when his marriage to Jennifer came to an end, and he soon suffered a major heart attack. It caused quite a bit of damage to his heart. And looking back, I think we were all really fortunate that Burt lived as long as he did, because his heart was very, very damaged by that heart attack. Well, he spent a while recovering at daughter Jenny's house, and after that, again, he changed direction by working as an American Airlines reservations agent for 5 years. Burt was always enhanced and enamored of the Asian culture, as you well know if you know him. He could speak Mandarin, he could speak other languages with ease, and over the years he'd gotten a master's degree, actually a couple, I guess, in Oriental Studies. So it was no surprise when he was married for a while to a Japanese woman, Yoshia. In the 2000s, back to radio, back to his passion that had never left him since he was a kid. It wasn't easy now because he had become virtually totally deaf, but he was saved by having surgery and given cochlear implants. Wow. Before that, it was really difficult because he just couldn't hear you. And you know, that has got to be one of the greatest social stumbling blocks when a person is deaf. But the cochlear implants really helped him. And Burt became the afternoon host at the University of Arizona NPR radio station, KUAZ-FM. And after a lengthy stint, that's where he retired. Imagine he started out at 15 years old at KTKT-FM. And he was one of the announcers on Tucson FM radio at the very beginning, and his career ended 60 years later. He was on Tucson FM radio. Few stops in between, but boy, that was quite a run. Okay, well, now that was the Wikipedia version of Burt's life. Now let me tell you about my buddy, the rest of the story. Who was Burton Hemley Schneider? You know, I told you something about him at the beginning of the story when I said that after the bus driver swerved to avoid the dog, and he says, should he have endangered the life of all the kids on the bus to avoid hitting the dog? But that was Burt, and Burt was always thinking, always looking at all sides of an issue, always measuring everything. I told him one time, I said, you overthink everything. It was only because I would underthink everything, I'm sure. You know, Burt was a kind person. That doesn't mean he wouldn't accidentally hurt your feelings, but he would never do it on purpose. Sometimes his honesty would get in the way of his kindness. For example, if you were a woman, you would never want to ask him, do you think these pants make my butt look too big? Ooh, don't ask him that. I would ask him, I would say, well, Burt, what do you think of my latest business enterprise? Well, it never surprised me when he said, I don't know how you can get away with that. Yes, he was very honest. He would never steal. He wouldn't even cheat on his taxes. Can you imagine that? You know, money or status was not important to him ever. His jobs or work were not important. What was important to Burt? Relationships were important to Burt. Relationships mattered. Like with his children, he loved those 3 girls. He doted on them. He was always worried about them, always worried about them. He wanted the absolute best for them, not just his 3 girls, but his grandchildren and his great-grandchild too. He was always generous with his time and money. He always had time for you. Whenever I asked him to contribute with me to a cause, he would do so without hesitation, even though he did not have a lot of money. Burt never swore or used vile language. He didn't like it. And can you imagine in today's society not ever swearing? Just really amazing. But he didn't do that. Believe me, I made up for both of us. He loved his dogs. Remember Teddy, who he had for years? And his most recent companion, who virtually never left his side, that was Hazel, the barky Chihuahua. Yet, you know, Burt was not perfect, as none of us are. He knew his flaws, and he admitted them. He would gladly tell anyone his faults. He would never try to hide them. I would say to him, Burt, don't tell people your faults. Why don't you tell everybody how wonderful you are, like I do? You would think that after being buddies for all those years that some of my grandiosity would have rubbed off on him, but it didn't. He was not a braggart. He was very humble, except in one area. Do you know who he bragged about? Not himself. He bragged about his kids. He bragged about his girls. He bragged about his grandchildren, his great-grandchild. bragged about his family. Well, and about those faults, well, he never stopped trying to overcome them and being a better person. Not always succeeding, but he was always trying. A month before he died, I took him down to Phoenix Civic Plaza so he could see the display they have for us in Zoom Records in the Tucson Musicians Museum. I took a photo of him next to our big picture on the wall, and I asked him, I said, well, what do you think? He says, where are we going to have lunch today? You know, he was never impressed with his own accomplishments. He didn't want accolades. That just was not important to him. He was a better person than me, and he helped me through the 70 years we spent as friends. He gave me good advice that actually more than once changed the course of my life for the better. So I say thank you, Bert. Thanks for everything. One last thing about Bert. You know, he was never late. Whatever time he was supposed to be someplace, he would always arrive 15 minutes or a half hour earlier. I am convinced that this morning he was here at 9:30, guaranteed. To quote the old saint from the 500s, John Cassian, the bond between friends cannot be broken by chance. No interval of time or space can destroy it. Not even death itself can part true friends. Goodbye, my friend. I love you, and you will always be in my heart.
Would you hold my name if I saw you in heaven? Would it be the same if I saw you in heaven? I must be strong and carry on, 'cause I know I don't belong here in heaven. Would you hold my hand if I saw you in heaven? Would you help me stand if I saw you in heaven? I'll find my way through night and day, 'cause I know I just can't stay here in heaven. Time can bring you down, time can bend your knee. Time can break your heart, have you begging please, begging please. Beyond the door, this 'cause I know I don't belong here in heaven.
We are the music. Our first breath is followed by our first song, lusty, loud, and primal, a solo that announces to the world, I have arrived. We are the music. As toddlers hearing our first reggae beat, we let our spines and hips bend and sway in response. As natural as the beats of our hearts, we are the music. The drone of the bass notes of the church organ, a vibration in our chest, tense muscles relax, the breath deepens. We are the music. As we push the air from our bellies out through chest and throat, our changing expressions shape the sound. We are the music. As we sing it together, voices blend to create harmony, each voice enriched by its connection to the next. We are the music. When one voice goes silent, the symphony changes. We listen hard for the echoes of that voice, and we feel its absence in every song. Now, as we sing with others, we create new melodies and harmonies, and that missing voice reminds us of the love that creates the music, bigger than any one of us, and we remember once and always, we are the music.
Look down, that lonesome road before you travel on. Look down, that lonesome road before you travel on. Look up, and meet your maker, for Gabriel blows his horn. Weary trotting such a load, traveling down that lonesome road. Look down, that lonesome road before you travel on. Some road before you travel on, before Gabriel blows his horn. Come with me, my love, to the sea of love. Well, I'm gonna tell you just how much I love you. Well, do you remember when we met? That's the day I knew you were my man. Well, I'm gonna tell you just how much I love you. Come with me remember when we met. That's the day I knew you were my best. Well, I'm going to tell you just how much I love you. As the day is ending, I think, dear, of you. As the sun is setting, I think, dear, of you. I love you only, dear, as the day is ending, I think, dear, of you. As the day is ending, I think, dear, of you. And as the day is ending, my darling, I think only of you. You see, my darling, I love you only, and it's so deep in my heart. As the day is ending, I think, dear, of you.
Thank you, everybody, for coming. I don't know how I'm going to get through this. This picture has a lot of significance because when we brought my dad home to his house after he was in Handmaker and dying for about a week, my sisters and I sat around at his bedside and sang songs. We sang Grease. And we put this hat on his head, and we said, "It's the final curtain call." And then he took his last breath. And he was just an amazing father. It was amazing when he was starting to pass away, my dad's hearing came back and he could hear us. And it was amazing. We had a very special relationship, and my dad was my first love. He was my soulmate. I called him Daddy-O, and he called me his Jenny-O. I was really the female version of him. Also, when I went to the home to pick up my dad's stuff, I found one sock in his room. And the significance of that is my dad one time went to Moorhead, Kentucky to take a job as, I don't know, Ray, maybe you can, where is Ray? Oh, maybe you can, I don't remember what it was, a disc jockey job or something. And he was driving his car and he found one of my socks and he just couldn't do it. He turned around and drove back and didn't finish that job. So that's really special that I found that sock and I keep it in my purse. Other things that I think about, when I think about my dad, I think about his amazing French toast. I remember how funny he is and his infectious laugh. He loved Simon and Garfunkel. Zoom Records was his life, and so was Ray and Renee. He was caring and generous and loving, and he was also called the shampoo man. He would wash my sisters and my hair, and he would always come in the bathroom, "I'm the shampoo man, I'm coming." And so I remember that always. And my dad was born to be a father. He struggled a lot with things in his life, but the one thing that I remember, and I think my sisters and I will remember, is that he was born to be a father. And he was an amazing father, and I'm gonna miss him beyond belief. This is short because I'm a mess. But I do wanna thank some people that helped me put this together. I wanna thank Jamili, Robert, Cassandra, who did an amazing job on the audiovisual. My neighbor, Mary, who's been watching Hazel for me, and she helped me bake 80 cupcakes. So we'll have those here in a minute. I'd like to thank Mary Weiss, Ray and Renee, my Aunt Patty, and Dependable Hospice, who took care of my dad when he was passing away, and they did an amazing job. And I put prayer cards on the chairs, and they have the Serenity Prayer on the back, and that was really my dad's favorite prayer. So if you ever want to think about my dad, you could say the Serenity Prayer. And I just want to thank all of you for coming. We're going to go in the room next door and have carrot cake, because that was my dad's favorite, coffee and water. And thank you for coming.
Go walking, let's go walking, Hazel. Let's go walking, Hazel. Oh, let's go walking. We're walking for a walking. Oh, we're walking, Hazel. Oh, look at that. Look at that. Yeah. Look what it says in that window. Shame on Trump. Ooh.
Look down,